There seems to be something happening with the restoration side of the comic business. It seems to me that the number that is given to a purple label book doesn't really matter. Once you've broken that seal and started restoring a book, it's gonna have a purple label. They can get it to 9.6. It's just a matter of how much time they put into it. That didn't used to always be the case. For decades, it wasn't. If there's a tear in the book, if there's pieces missing, if there's staples rusted, whatever, they can get it perfect. It doesn't seem like collectors value the blood, sweat, and tears they put into bringing these books up to top quality. So once that can happen, what difference does the number make? Because it's, to boil it down to one word, fake. Hi, and welcome to Grails to Astonish. It is time now to begin the ComicLink Fall Featured Auction closing night 1. In a few minutes, the very first book is going to close. In this case, it's Action Comics 13. It goes for 4 hours, so I got to kind of clear my schedule, which I was not able to do. I'm going to have to duck out in the middle of this, but I'll be back. I'm going to miss a few of these closings. Tonight, we got books closing from A to D in the alphabet. Ground rules on ComicLink. If you haven't watched these videos before, things happen very fast, almost always in the last 10 seconds. Other auction houses work very differently. They'll hold out for the last bidder. Every time the bid goes up, they'll say, anybody else, anybody else? They'll give it a minute. ComicLink does not. So everybody throws in their highest price they're willing to pay in the last few seconds and finds out if their highest price was in fact the highest price. That creates a different sort of dynamic than most other auction houses have. It also makes it very easy to schedule. All right, we got 2.5 minutes left to go. These first few books, we got 3 actions. Usually there's a lot more than that, but we got just 3. They sort of run the gamut. We got a pre-World War II Action Comics 4th Superman cover, and it predates Superman 1. So this is in that first 14 issues of Action Comics when Superman was taking off, so to speak. Not a particularly great or iconic cover, and this is as low a grade as you can get, still being in blue label. $5,100 is the bidding. Fair market is $6,500. We did just have the Superman 1 auction a week or two ago for $9.1 million, but as I said in my video covering that, I don't think that really has much to do with or affects the rest of the comic market. Other than it brings some attention in, people go, oh yeah, comics. You might get a few more people watching the auctions afterwards, but I don't think it's going to do much to raise the prices on even a fairly similar relevant book like this. Action Comics 13 came out 2 months before Superman 1. Last 10 seconds, update. Oh, we're up to 55, 6,300. 6,500 is the fair market, and we've closed at 5,600. So that's 15% down from fair market, which is what we're going to see a lot of. There's a few categories of books that will hit fair market and a few that consistently go above, but this is not one of them. Then we've got 252, not Spider-Man 252, Action Comics 252. Both series have key books at 252. In the case of Action Comics, it's the first Supergirl. This is closing in 3 seconds, 9,238 for a 6.5 copy. That is because there is a Supergirl movie filming right now on its way, so there's going to be some speculation going on for that. 4,800 is the fair market. We are way beyond that, but it did close at 9,238. I would call that a mistake. This is somebody speculating on the movie, thinking Supergirl's going to become a big deal. We've seen approximately 200,000 comic book movies come out in the last 25 years, particularly in the last 10 years. We all know how this goes. Maybe it'll be a good movie, maybe it'll be a bad movie. It's not going to be a great movie. It's just not. And these things just don't permeate in the culture the way they did 10 or 15 years ago. I'm not expecting much from the Supergirl movie. It might be good, but I don't think that is going to trickle down to the key comic going up in value as a result. Although, on the contrary, here it did just happen. This sold for 9,238 with a fair market of 4,800. I think that's because of the timing. It's because people know it's coming. As the movie gets closer, you'll see that drop. This is the big one. Adventure Comics number 40, Unrestored 6.5. closing in 8 seconds. I believe I'd predicted this was going to close around $70,000, and the fair market at 6.5 is $68,000. There are 46 copies of this book. I think there are 26 unrestored copies. This is not a comic with any particular fandom or anything. It's popular among golden collectors, and that's it. But it is very, very rare. 68,000 in 6.5. Bidding was at 39,256, and it closed for 47,000. That falls way, way short of where I thought it was going to land. I'm going to say this book's going to sell for 70,000. This is Blue Label, so we're not dealing with restoration. 6.5 is not a high grade for a bronze or modern or copper book, but it is a very high grade for this particular book. This should have gone for 68,000, and it didn't. So somebody got a great price. That's always the good news. When a book goes for too low, that means that somebody got a screaming deal, and good for them. We got a bunch more adventure comics. The first Hourman here. For all you Hourman fans out there, that is going in 8.0 for 12,375. 5 seconds to close. Update. Ooh, 13,457. So now it's closed. Ooh, 18,527. One of the top 5 graded overall. I did not look at this one in the preview because I don't know anything about Hourman. He wears, what do you call those things? An hourglass. He wears an hourglass around his neck. That seems quite cumbersome. I certainly wouldn't want to have to fight crime with an hourglass hanging around my neck. We got a couple more Hourmans. Single highest graded, 9.8. It's the Edgar Church Mile High. I don't think I've ever talked about Edgar Church before. He has kind of the original pedigree. Edgar Church lived in Colorado, was incredibly meticulous in how he bought and stored his massive comic collection. And he'd not only keep them in a dark place, but he, I believe, put wax paper on either side of the book before he stacked them and put them away. So he kept them out of sunlight, out of lamplight, and in Colorado, which happens to be ideal climate for storage. Cool and dry, which is what you want. So you don't want to keep your comic collection in Florida, which ironically is where CGC is headquartered, but you do want to keep them in Colorado. So he stored them at his home for, who knows, 50, 40 years until I think he passed away. I'm guessing that's how these things usually go. And then his collection was discovered, and there are just these immaculate copies of virtually every Golden Age book. A lot of the value in this book is that Edgar Church pedigree, but it is off white to white. So a little bit of a ding on the page quality, but it's an otherwise perfect copy of Adventure Comics number 55. There's one in the census, and it's sold 3 times. So these would most likely all be the same copy. The same copy sold 3 times for 20,000, 10,000, and 16,000, and it has landed for the first time on ComicLink with a sale. Bidding was at 10,050, 13,450. So in between the last 2 sales. Albedo number 2. This looks like Usagi Yojimbo. The first appearance of Usagi. It's probably not Usagi. From 1984. I remember this character. He crossed over with the Ninja Turtles now and then when I was a kid. Signed and sketched by Stan Sakai in 2025. So the creator is still around today. 8.0 white pages. Fair market at 8.0 is $3,700. Aliens number 1 and 9.8. Fair market's 2,450. Bidding 1,752. Up to 2,025. It is a sequel to Aliens, as I recall, that came out 5 years before Alien 3. Alien 3 completely contradicted the storyline here, which I think follows Hicks and Newt, kind of a separate branching timeline, as we call them these days. This is the Aliens multiverse taking shape. There's this ostensible sequel to Aliens, and then I think there's the William Gibson sequel to Aliens that never got filmed, which there is a radio play or a podcast where they got the cast of Aliens to read William Gibson's script for Alien 3. And then we got Alien 3. And then I think there was even going to be a movie from the creator of District 9, whose name escapes me at the moment. He was going to make a sequel to Alien with Sigourney Weaver. I think there was going to be CG de-aging her. Never happened, but it was going to be yet another branch of Alien 3. Didn't happen. It never turns out good with that stuff. We've tried it with Terminator like 4 times, creating branch-off sequels to Terminator 2 that ignore Terminator 3. None of them have been good. I think there is a best of them and a worst of them, but none of them come close to the first or second Terminators, and nothing that's happened with Aliens comes close. Yeah, nothing comes close to the first and second Alien movies, and nothing ever will. Albedo 2 has closed, 3,600, just a smidge below fair market. 8 seconds, we get this Aliens closing. Aliens number 1, 2,450 is the fair market, and 2025, 425 below fair market, so that's about 20%. All-Star number 7, this is the first book with Superman and Batman on the cover, even though they're teeny tiny little thumbnails in the corner. 8.5 white pages. Bidding was at 3,417 and it sold for 4,200. Not a big drama, not a big surprise. All Winners, number 5 at 8.0. In the preview, I showed you my copy of All Winners. Number 5 at 6.0 with a detached centerfold. This is a much better looking copy. $5,032 was the bidding and it closed at $5,939. Good, but not great. The big closing of the night, the one I'm most anticipating. Amazing Fantasy 15, restored 9.6, and unrestored 5.0. I made a big deal out of this in the previews. I'm almost certain now, I'll remove the drama and say I'm almost certain the unrestored 5.0 is going to sell for higher. The reason is because there seems to be something happening with the restoration side of the comic business. First of all, I will say, I don't know if this is a Matt and Emily Myers copy, but it seems like it might be. It is CGC, which they stopped using after the lawsuit, but it was graded in 2019 on the tail end of their relationship with CGC. And I am certain that they had restored some copies of Amazing Fantasy 15, possibly just one, possibly more than one, but their books always landed in the 9.6 to 9.0 range until they didn't. And CGC, I think it was over in Amazing Fantasy 15 that CGC gave the Myers book a 9.0 or less, and I think they even gave it a B quality of restoration, and that caused a falling out. They were very upset by that grade, and for understandable reasons. So given that information, this maybe isn't the Myers copy. In any case, the fact that the Myers exist and have come up with the innovations to restoration that they have means that with enough time and expertise and just labor under a microscope, you can turn virtually any book into a restored 9.6, no matter how bad it is in a Blue Label 2.0, a Blue Label 0.5. The Myers seem capable of bringing to 9.2, 9.4, 9.6 with their amazing techniques. And I have absolute respect and admiration for what they do, but it does not seem like the hobby does. It doesn't seem like collectors value the blood, sweat, and tears they put into bringing these books up to top quality. And since they can now do it, it seems to me that the number that is given to a purple label book doesn't really matter. Once you've broken that seal and started restoring a book, it's gonna have a purple label. They can get it to 9.6. It's just a matter of how much time they put into it. And if they're being paid or if they're just putting in their own time because they own the book, they can get it to 9.6. That didn't used to always be the case. For decades, it wasn't. But they know what the CGC graders grade on, and they know how to get it up to CGC or CBCS's standards for a 9.6 grade. So they're going to do it every time. If there's a tear in the book, if there's pieces missing, if there's staples rusted, whatever, they can get it perfect. So once that can happen, what difference does the number make? That's not necessarily my logic. That just seems to be collector logic. Nobody's interested in this book because it's, to boil it down to one word, fake. People feel this is fake. You might as well be buying a reprint. That's what I see people saying in the comments. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that is the sentiment. And I don't see that sentiment changing. So there is not a high price being put on this book. A 9.6 Blue Label of Amazing Fantasy 15. I don't know what the grade of the book that sold in 2021 was. I think it was a 9.6, possibly a 9.2. $3.6 million. Let's say it was a 9.6. 3.6 million is what a 9.6 Blue Label is worth. What is a restored Silver Age book worth if an unrestored copy is worth $3.6 million? Is it worth half or a third or a quarter? Let's go 10%. Let's say 10% is what a restored copy is worth. $3.6 million, 10% of that is $360,000. That is the lowest estimation by the old measure of what this book should be worth. And this is going for $36,000 with 6 minutes left. This is going at 1% of what the unrestored value would be. I understand the argument. I understand the concern about restored books. This seems like a massive overcorrection to me. This book looks great. Now, I've seen some restorations, and we've got one happening tomorrow night, that have been reglossed, and they don't look good to me. This looks gorgeous. It's an A3 restored. There's nothing to my eye that looks wrong to me. That does happen sometimes. If you've ever read the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about art historians who can look at sculptures or paintings and just instantly say, that's a fake. They don't know why, they just know. I'm not an art historian and I'm not a comic book historian, but I have had the experience of looking at some books and going, yeah, that's not right. Something's off here. This doesn't set off any triggers for me. This just looks like a beautiful copy of the book. And yet it is being valued by the market at 1% of what the market has valued the unrestored copy at. Now, as for this 5.0 unrestored, there's not much to say about it. It looks like a 5.0. I think this is a fair grade, off-white pages. The book value is $40,000. It's already going for $48,000. What that suggests to me is a bit of a rebound in the high-end market. This is already going for 20% above the book value, which had dipped down very far. I think it's going back up. The good time to buy an Amazing Fantasy 15 was probably earlier this year. Just looking at this one sale, it seems like maybe that time has passed and prices are starting to go back up. I think I've said my piece on this book. I'm just going to update the prices here. Still at $36,000. This is going to happen. Maybe it's going to double in the last 10 seconds. Maybe it'll get $70,000. Somebody in 2021 at the peak of the market paid $3.6 million for this book. Let's cut that in half, okay? Let's say we're not where we were in 2021 and 2025, 4 years later. Let's say we're half that. Let's say that book that sold for $3.6 million would sell for $1.8 today. Now let's take that down to 10%, $180,000. So that is the harshest ding I'm going to give on the price, and that is the harshest ding I'm going to give on restoration. I'm going to say this should sell for $180,000 because it is a 9.6 copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. A lot of people just see this and they say fake. It might as well be an $8 facsimile reprint you can get from any local comic shop. I disagree. I don't know what this would be in unrestored. Some people have said this is probably a 2.0 that's been restored up to 9.6. That very well may be true. But it's a beautiful copy of the book. It is the real thing, at least some of it. You know, this is like the ship of Theseus. How much of this is the real book? Who knows? Probably a fair amount, I would think. Enough that it should not be penalized as hard as it is. I asked the question in the preview, which is going to sell for more, a 9.6 purple label or a 5.0 blue label? I think the answer is very clear. The blue label is going to sell for significantly more. And then I leave it to you guys to argue in the comments about whether or not you think that's just, whether or not you think that the market is being fair to these two books. I said that I would rather have the 5.0. Personally, I would rather have a blue label 5.0 than a purple label 9.6 because I don't particularly care about perfection. I want my books to look like they're from the time that they're from. If money was not an issue, I would take the 5.0 over the 9.6. But I still think this should be valued higher than it is. It's closing in 15 seconds. So we're now entering the zone where the competitive bidding should start. 10 seconds. I'm going to do a quick update. Nothing. 5 seconds left. Is no one going to bid up this book? $180,000 is what I say it should sell for. And it sold for $45,000. We know with 30 seconds to go that this 5.0 is going to sell for more because the bidding on this 5.0 is $48,600. I think there's unlikely to be another bid on this because it's already 20% above book value. It's just a book that everybody wants. I want one. I've never had an AF15. I would love to have one. It is my grail of all grails. Perhaps someday I will get one. If I get enough likes and subscribes. That was shameless. All right. It's sold. Let's see what happened. $48,601. Final bid is $48,601. Yeah, nobody else bid. So 20% above fair market. Seller did great on that one. This is a very good copy. Aside from the spine and some chips on the bottom, beautiful color strike. The reds on his costume are as bright as I've ever seen on a copy of AF15. I think of every book in this auction, this is the one I would most want. All right, I'm going to cut the first video short. I'm going to make one video out of that. Say goodbye for now, and then I'll be back soon. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.